And let me now share my screen with the designing the lesson plans. So on the Canvas platform, you have this section of discussing how to design these structured lesson plans, which includes all 4 skills, and gives you a list of major points to consider. And these are the same points that you had on the conversation activities. So there's a strong similarity between the two lesson plan types. And you need to consider these following factors in the educational setting: the role of English in the country that you're teaching, wherever that is, whether it is a regular means of communication or primarily a subject taught in the school curriculum, where in turn it may or may not be the first foreign language. Is English spoken in the community outside class or never heard? That can affect how your students progress with their learning of the English language. If they only hear English in the classroom, they will not progress as quickly as if they can hear English out in the real world and practice their English speaking skills. So that definitely is a point to consider and important to understand in whatever country you're in. Then the role of English in the school and its place in the curriculum. So are you in a school where English is used to teach other courses, or is English only used in the English as a second language class? The teachers, you need to think about their status, their training, their mother tongue, and the attitudes to their job and expectations. And the resources available, such as books and paper, audio-visual material, laboratories, computers, etc., whatever resources you're using to present the lesson plan to your class. Management, administration, and support personnel. There are particular roles about teaching staff. Additionally, the position of the teacher in the overall system needs to be understood, as does the nature of the hierarchy in any particular institution. Depending on the school you're teaching in and the country that you're teaching in, teaching English as a second language may or may not be well regarded, and you may or may not get enough support from other personnel. Then the number of pupils to be taught and the size of the classes. The large class problem is a very familiar one in many settings worldwide. The bigger the class, the more difficult it is to present some material. And so Doris, in her example a few minutes ago of her lesson plan, had 20 students, and that would be considered an appropriate size class, and it's easy for her to divide them into groups for role playing and other factors of the lesson plan. The amount of time available for the program, both over a working year and in any week or term. The type of tests used and ways students are evaluated. Assessment procedures may, for example, be formal or informal and subjective. They may also be external in the form of a national examination, or internal to the institution and the course. So the informal and subjective style of assessment would be during role play by the students, with the teacher walking around the classroom, listening to the role playing that's going on, and the teacher could make an assessment of how each of the students is doing with their English and their speaking. And so that's subjective. It's the teacher's opinion right on the spot, and it's more informal. The formal type of assessment would be marking a test or marking a written assignment that the students hand in to you. With these factors in mind, you should then consider the following essential elements of lesson planning. The goals. You should be able to identify an overall purpose or goal that you will attempt to accomplish by the end of the class period. This objective may be quite generalized, but it serves as a unifying theme for you. Then the objectives. It is imperative to state explicitly what you want students to gain from the lesson. Explicit statements help you to be sure that you indeed know what it is you want to accomplish and preserve the unity of your lesson plan. Predetermine whether or not you are trying to accomplish too much, and evaluate students' success at the end of or after the lesson. Objectives are most clearly captured concerning what students will do. However, many language objectives are not overly observable, and therefore you may need to depart from strictly behavioral items for some objectives. Try to avoid vague statements like students will learn about the passive voice, or students will practice some listening exercises, or students will make the reading selection. You would be unable to confirm the realization of any of these sorts of loosely stated objectives. So be very specific when you state the objectives. In stating objectives, distinguish between terminal goals, which is the final learning outcome that will be measured and evaluated, and enabling objectives, which are the interim steps that build upon each other and lead to the terminal objectives. For example, the terminal lesson objective may be students will successfully request information about airplane arrivals and departures, while the enabling objectives will be students will comprehend and produce the following 10 new vocabulary items. Students will read and understand airline schedules. Students will produce questions with when, where, and what time. Students will produce appropriate, polite forms of requesting. The materials and equipments that you use. Decent planning tactics includes knowing what needs to be taken inside the classroom. The procedures, as a very general set of guidelines for planning, one might make sure his or her plan includes an opening statement or activity as a warm-up, a test of activities and techniques in which he or she has considered appropriate proportions of time for whole class work, small group work, and pair work, the teacher talking and students talking. Evaluation. If a lesson has no evaluation component, one can easily make assumptions that are not informed by careful observation or measurement. Evaluation does not have to be a separate element of lessons, such as a test. It can take place in the course of regular classroom activity informally as an assessment that is made after the students have sufficient opportunities for learning. Adjustments can be made in lesson plans for the following days. Extra class work. Finding applications or extensions of classroom activity that will help students to do some learning beyond the class hour are essential parts of teaching. Homework is in the form of handout sheets. Homework in the form of handout sheets for written repetitive exercises that have little to do with real life must be avoided. So what you want to do is you want to give an extra classwork assignment where the students are creating their assignment response without just filling in pages and exercises. Guidelines for lesson planning. If one is given a textbook and told to teach from it, he or she must identify the requirements of how many chapters or units should be covered. Looking through the chapters, one might go through the following sequence. If the curriculum and the overall plan of the textbook are familiar to you, go over the specific textbook chapter that you will teach. If you are without a manual and are simply following a curriculum set up by yourself, you will find that ESL websites come in extremely handy with tips, lessons, activities, and handouts. Try the following, but keep in mind that links are infinite. So these are some links that you could actually go to find ideas. Now, we don't want you copying what you find there on these links, but you can get ideas about how to proceed with these lesson plans. Determine what the topic and purpose of the lesson will be and write the overall draft out papers, 1 to 3 explicitly stated terminal objectives. Decide which exercises from the textbooks shall be done. Change, delete, add to, all based on objectives. Draft out a skeletal outline of what the lessons will look like. Carefully anticipate step-by-step procedures for carrying out all techniques, especially those that involve changes and additions. For teachers who have never taught before, it can be useful to write a script of the lesson plan in which the exact anticipated words are written down. Scripting out a lesson plan helps one to be more specific in planning and can often prevent classroom pitfalls. It can also give a sense of security by providing one with something to fall back on when the spontaneous words just can't seem to come out right. Of course, scripting an entire lesson is long, but more practical partial scripts should cover introduction to the activities, directions for a task, statements of rules and generalizations, the oral testing techniques, and conclusions to activities and the class hour lesson. After the step-by-step procedure are drafted, look at how the lesson holds together. 4 considerations come into play here. Variety. Are there enough different activities to keep minds alert and enthusiasm high? Sequence. Are all elements of the lesson put together logically, building progressively toward accomplishing the ultimate goal? Pace. Too many short activities are as ineffective as too few long ones. Students should get comfortable with one activity, work at it, and switch before it becomes too easy or tedious. Time. If the planned lesson ends early, have some backup activity ready to insert, and if the lesson isn't complete as planned, be ready to end a class gracefully on time and on the next day continue where it was left off. Figuring out in advance how easy or difficult certain techniques will be is something that usually must be learned by experience. Some tasks cause difficulties by themselves. Therefore, make the lesson's directions crystal clear by writing them out in advance. Often showing what to do is more effective than telling the students what to do, and solicit a few examples from the better students. If they have not grasped the exercise, no one else in the class has. A lesson plan will aim at the majority of students in the class who compromise the average ability range. However, the lesson plans should also consider the variations in a classroom. Several steps can be taken into account. Design techniques that have easy and demanding aspects or items. Solicit responses to easier items from students who are below the norm and to more challenging items from those above the norm. Try to design techniques that will involve all students' activities. Involve all students actively. Use small group and pair work time to circulate and give extra attention to those below or above the norm. Get enough consideration in the classroom plan to the balance that between student talk and teacher talk. See to it that students have a chance to talk, to produce language, and even to initiate the topics and ideas. The final consideration in lesson planning process is very practical one. What sort of note will a teacher carry into the classroom? If one has pages and pages of them, she or he might get too caught up on detail and never free from spontaneity. A lesson plan on one page is usually sufficient. Additionally, ask those questions. Will your students be taking notes as you teach? What will they follow in their textbooks? What resources will they possess to recall this lesson in the future and understand as clearly as possible? So then they give a sample of a lesson plan here. This is an intermediate level pre-university class at the American Language Institute at San Francisco State University. The 16 students in the class range in ages from 18 to 25. Their general goals are academically oriented. Their native languages are Japanese, Korean, Mandarin, Indonesian, Thai, and Arabic. That's quite a mixture. It becomes very challenging with all those different mother tongues in the same classroom. Terminal objectives. The students will develop inner expectancy rules that enable them to predict and anticipate what someone else will say on the phone, and students will solicit and receive information by requesting it over the telephone. The enabling objectives. You can see with the enabling objectives that they identify what students will do. They will comprehend a simple phone conversation played on a tape recorder. They will identify who the participants are, what they are doing, and when. And they will comprehend and produce necessary vocabulary for this topic. They will understand cultural and linguistic schemata regarding movies, theaters, and arrange to see a movie with someone. They will infer what a second speaker is saying on the phone by eavesdropping on one speaker only. Each student will ask someone to go to a movie with him or her and respond appropriately to a corresponding request. Students will get live movie information over the phone. Then the materials and equipment, a tape recorder, CD player with a recorded conversation, a telephone if possible, or toy facsimile, movie advertisements, 8 different ones. These can be found online or in a newspaper, and a movie guide page for extra class work. And then the procedures are listed and a sample of the conversation between the teacher and a student. And then they've got different listening activities down here. So you can go through the rest of this on your own, ladies. Any questions about that? Yes, Aswathi.